The city of Valor burned beneath a sky filled with acid clouds and crimson lightning. Towering structures of glass and bone cracked and fell, shaking the earth with each collapse. Creatures fled through the streets, some on foot, others floating. Or slithering. The Empress's judgment had arrived. On the thrones of each fallen province, she placed a skull. Not just any skull, but the cleanly scorched remains of her previous consorts. Husband 47 had lasted only 3 weeks before. He spoke a word she disliked. He was gone in a flash of fire that left no bones below the neck. The Empress of Zavkara ruled alone once again. Her long silver hair shimmered as she stood before her court of trembling nobles. No one dared to breathe loudly. Her claws clicked against the stone as she paced, eyes glowing with cold fury. She pointed to the line of suitors waiting below her throne. Next, she hissed, and another alien male was dragged forward. He was tall and muscular, bred to be brave, but his knees still trembled. Within minutes, his answers disappointed her. His body crumpled into dust at the base of the stairs. A dozen more met the same fate. Not because they lied, but because they showed fear. The Empress hated fear. She hated cowardice. And most of all, she hated weak men who flattered her like frightened children. Far beyond the capital, a transport ship entered the atmosphere with a human on board. He was not a soldier or a prince. He was a mechanic. His name was Jackson Hawley, and he was sent to repair ancient generators left behind by the Terran Federation. No one told him this planet had a queen who executed lovers for sport. Jackson had dark hair, tired eyes, and a toolkit heavier than his patience. He didn't know about the executions. He didn't know his name had been randomly drawn from a corrupted file sent to the Empress's court. All he knew was that he had a job to do and hated being interrupted. The guards found him in the generator bay beneath the mountain palace. He stood covered in grease, cursing at a broken fusion core. He didn't flinch when they surrounded him with spears made of crystal and shadow. Instead, he sighed and wiped his hands. "You got the wrong guy," he said, looking them in the eye without fear. They didn't believe him, or maybe they didn't care. Either way, he was marched into the dark halls of the palace, past blood-stained carpets and the quiet sobs of failed lovers who begged for another chance. When the Empress saw him, her expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. The guards dropped him to his knees like the others. He didn't kneel. He just sat back and stared at her in silence. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice soft like poison silk. "Jackson, Hawley, maintenance. Team, Terran Division," he said without blinking. The court gasped. No one had ever answered her like that. Not in years. Not without trembling. Not with that tired tone that made it sound like she was just another item on his checklist. She leaned forward, her lips curling slightly. "You do not kneel? Do I have to? You don't fear me? Should I?" The silence in the court felt like a storm about to break. Dozens of nobles looked to the wall where skulls hung like trophies. Some of those skulls still had their wedding crowns. She stood and walked down the steps toward him. Each step echoed like thunder. She looked into his eyes and saw no terror. Just confusion and irritation. He was annoyed that she dragged him away from his work. "You want to be 48? She asked, voice like fire wrapped in ice. "No offense, but I didn't even want to be number 1, he replied. A strange sound filled the chamber. Not a scream, not a sob, a chuckle. It came from the Empress. For the first time in over a decade, she didn't kill the suitor who stood before her. Instead, she turned and returned to her throne without a word. The guards looked at each other, confused. The nobles whispered. The human had not been executed. He had not begged. He had not praised her beauty like the others. And now he stood in the throne room alive, covered in grease, completely unimpressed by royal power. That night, the skulls on the wall remained 47 in number. Jackson stood in the corridor of the royal palace, arms crossed and boots still stained with oil. The guards didn't know what to do with him. They were used to dragging away dead bodies, not escorting someone the Empress had spared. He didn't speak much. He didn't ask questions. He just looked around with tired eyes, as if the marble floors and glowing chandeliers meant nothing. To him, to Jackson, they didn't. This wasn't a palace. It was just another broken system with too many layers and too little purpose. The Empress sat alone in her private chamber, staring at the fire that danced inside a glass orb. Her mind replayed the words he said, not because they were clever, but because they were real, honest, raw. He didn't try to impress her. He didn't fear her. He simply existed as himself. For over 2 centuries, she had ruled the Zavkara Empire with power and pain. Her husbands had come and gone like shadows. Each one claimed love. Each one offered loyalty, but all of them lied. Even their silence had been fake. A silence crafted from fear, not truth. Jackson, however, had no masks. He didn't want the throne. He didn't want her wealth. He wanted her to leave him alone so he could fix her broken power core. The next morning, he was summoned. Again, he didn't change his clothes. He didn't clean his face. He walked into the royal court as if he were clocking in for a shift at some rusty outpost. "You are still here," she said as he entered. "Didn't get clearance to leave." "Your guards won't let me near my ship," he replied. The nobles waited for lightning to strike him. But it didn't. The Empress raised one eyebrow. Her curiosity now outweighed her anger. "Why did you not kneel when I first summoned you?" she asked. "Didn't seem necessary." "You didn't ask politely," he said. She stood from her throne. Her armor reflected the sunlight pouring through the crystal ceiling. She walked toward him again. Her voice stayed calm, but her steps were sharp. "You are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid," she said. "Maybe both." "Mostly just tired," he answered. The court couldn't believe what they were witnessing. The human wasn't trying to flirt. He wasn't trying to survive. He just talked to her like she was a supervisor delaying his job. That somehow made her listen even more. "You repaired the core beneath the palace," she said. "Half of it. Your entire fusion grid is riddled with corruption. You've got energy bleeding out in 3 sectors," he replied. "And you know how to fix it?" "Of course, I read the manual. Also, I'm not an idiot," he said. Her lips curved slightly, not a full smile, but something close. She had destroyed armies for less attitude. Yet with him, it felt different, not disrespectful, just unfiltered. "I want to test something," she said and turned away. She walked to a nearby wall where a long metal staff stood. With a flick of her wrist, it began to glow. The guards tensed. Jackson didn't. He didn't even take a step back. "You are not afraid of weapons?" she asked. "Only when they're in the hands of idiots," he said. She threw the staff at him with lightning speed. It stopped an inch from his throat, hovering in the air as if waiting for permission to strike. Jackson didn't flinch. Not even a blink. "Interesting," she whispered. She recalled the staff and turned away. The nobles stood in shock. She had just tested him the way she tested every potential consort. Except he didn't fail. He didn't pass either. He simply ignored the test. As she sat back on her throne, she said one quiet command. "Let him go where he pleases. Do not block him again," she ordered. Jackson walked out of the hall without saying thank you. He didn't need permission. He needed parts, tools, and time. That's all. And deep in her heart, for the first time in years, the Empress didn't feel the urge to execute a man. Jackson walked through the palace halls with a cable slung over one shoulder. Servants and soldiers moved aside when they saw him coming. Not because of fear, but because they didn't know what else to do. No human had ever walked here freely. Before, he wasn't dressed like royalty. His boots were dusty. His jacket was patched. A wrench poked out of his back pocket. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He had work to finish. He entered the lower power vaults again. The lights flickered. The temperature control was faulty. He muttered to himself as he opened the main panel and began reconnecting the power nodes. Above him, the Empress stood on a high balcony, watching through a glass floor. She didn't speak. She didn't send anyone. She just watched the way he moved with focus and purpose. He didn't pause to admire the architecture. He didn't get distracted by the gold-trimmed walls or the floating drones humming through the air. He kept his hands moving. His eyes never left the wires. She turned to her advisor, a tall, thin alien named Vresh, who wore robes that shimmered like smoke. He had served her for 60 years and had never once questioned her judgment. "You watch him too much," Vresh said carefully. "He does not pretend." "That is rare," she replied. "He is dangerous," Vresh added. "Only to systems that rely on lies," she answered. Jackson repaired the energy grid section by section. When the first 2 levels stabilized, he returned to the engineering bay. There was no celebration, no praise, just another job done. A group of palace guards waited for him. But they didn't come to arrest him. One of them held a broken containment stabilizer. He looked nervous as he stepped forward. "Can you fix this?" the guard asked. Jackson took the device and studied it. He nodded once and waved the guard toward a workbench. He didn't speak much. He let the tools do the talking. Soon more guards came, then servants, then even an old court librarian with a cracked light slate. Jackson fixed them all, quietly, quickly, without asking for anything in return. Word spread fast. The human didn't demand gold. He didn't seek power. He didn't flirt with nobles or try to earn favors. He worked. Then he left. That night, the Empress summoned him again. This time he was allowed to walk into the throne room without escort. He wiped his hands on a cloth and stood in the center, staring at her with the same tired expression. "You do not ask why I keep calling you," she said. "You keep breaking things," he replied. The court was silent. Vresh narrowed his eyes, but the Empress smiled for real this time. It was brief, but it changed the whole room. "You are strange for a human," she said. "You're strange for a queen," he replied. She stepped down again, slow and graceful. Her eyes glowed faintly in the dim blue light. She circled around him like a predator, but he didn't flinch. "You know I executed 47 men who stood where you stand now," she said. "I read the list." "Seems like you've got high standards," he replied. "None of them were like you." She said, "Good. I'd hate to be 48, he said. She stopped in front of him. Her fingers were tipped with gold claws, elegant but deadly. She reached out and lifted his chin slightly. "You are not afraid of dying?" she asked. "I'm more afraid of wasting time," he replied. For the first time she didn't see a man trying to survive. She saw a man simply existing. He wasn't resisting her power. He was just uninterested in it. "You are either the most honest man I've ever met, or the most foolish," she whispered. "Maybe both," he said. She turned away and walked back to her throne. Her voice rang clear and strong. "Let him stay. Give him full access to the palace," she said. The court gasped. Vresh looked like he had swallowed fire. But no one dared to speak against her. Jackson stood there, still not smiling, still not bowing. He just gave a small nod and walked out of the hall as if nothing had changed. But something had changed. The sun above Zavkara glowed with pale blue fire. It was a cold star, distant and ancient. From the upper towers of the palace, Jackson could see the pale rings swirling far beyond the horizon. But he didn't care about the view. He was chasing a malfunction deep in the coolant lines. He climbed into a maintenance shaft with his toolbox slamming against his hip. He didn't wait for guards or engineers. He didn't ask for clearance. He had a map in one hand and a broken sensor in the other. The Empress stood in her chamber watching him through silent monitors. Her core had started whispering again. Some said she was enchanted. Some said she was planning a strange execution. No one knew the truth. Vresh approached her again, voice low and sharp. He warned her that Jackson's presence was spreading unrest. Some nobles felt insulted. Others feared the end of tradition. She listened but said nothing. In the lower halls, Jackson opened a rusted hatch and dropped down into the subreactor pit. It smelled like burnt ozone and oil. His boots splashed into coolant. He grunted and got to work. He didn't need applause. He didn't want recognition. He worked because something was broken. And that meant someone might die if it wasn't. Fixed colon 2 hours passed, then 3. By the time he emerged, soaked and freezing, the lights in the western wing were finally stable. A young alien servant approached him nervously. She carried a tray of food but couldn't meet his eyes. Her hands trembled. Jackson took the tray and nodded once. "Thanks," he said before walking past her toward his small chamber near the engine vaults. The Empress called for him again that evening. This time, he was brought to the garden terrace. Moonlight shone through. Vines that twisted around tall pillars. A soft wind stirred the glowing petals. She stood alone beside a pool of still water. Her reflection shimmered beside her boots. She didn't turn when he arrived. She just spoke. "Do you hate being here?" She asked. "No, but I hate wasting time," he replied. "Then why do you stay?" She asked. "Because your palace is falling apart. And no one else knows how to fix it," he said. She turned to face him slowly. Her eyes glowed like dying stars. She stepped closer, but not in threat. In curiosity. "You think I need you?" She said. "No, but your people might," he answered. She walked around him again. Not like a predator now. Like a scholar observing something strange, something new. Something impossible. "You are different from the others." They came with lies in their mouths and gold on their hands. "You come with dirt under your nails and warnings on your lips," she said. "They came to win your heart." "I came to fix your wiring," he replied. A quiet laugh escaped her lips. Not cruel, not mocking, just soft, almost surprised. She gestured for him to follow her down the path between the trees. "Do you know why I killed the others?" She asked. "They disappointed you," he said. "They worshipped me. And I hate worship." "Worship is just fear in disguise," she said. "I don't worship anyone." "You already noticed that," he replied. She stopped walking and looked up at the stars. For a moment, she looked smaller. Not weak, just tired. "Just alone. I built this empire to protect my kind. But power demands blood, so I gave it. Again and again," she said. "You've paid your price." "Doesn't mean you need to keep paying," he said. "Are you trying to change me, human?" She asked. "No. I'm just telling you your palace won't hold through the next cycle if the coolant continues leaking," he said. She stared at him and smiled again. This time it lingered. "You are either the strangest man I have met or the only real one," she whispered. He shrugged and turned toward the path. "Let me know when your cum relay fails. I'll be under the east spires running diagnostics," he said. And just like that, he walked away again. Not to chase her. Not to impress her. But to keep the place running. Because it was broken. Because someone had to care. And for once, she didn't feel insulted by being left behind. Whispers traveled like wind through the palace walls. Servants spoke in corners. Nobles avoided the hallways near the mechanics' quarters. No one understood why the Empress had not executed the human yet. He had disrespected her. Ignored customs. Mocked court manners, and still, she spared him. Worse, she kept calling for him. Jackson didn't notice the whispers. He was in the lower east wing, replacing fusion tubes that hadn't been checked in years. He hummed a broken Earth song as he twisted the bolts into place. He worked fast, efficient, never asked for help, never needed supervision. And yet, he always finished the job cleaner than any local engineer. The Empress walked through the vaults that day, alone. She found him sitting beside a humming coil, wiping his hands with a rag. "You could have lived a quiet life back on your homeworld," she said. "Wouldn't be that quiet." "Earth's got its own madness," he replied. "Then why come here?" She asked. "I didn't choose this assignment. But now that I'm here, I'm finishing it," he said. She stood in silence for a moment, watching his hands. They were scarred, rough, honest hands that spoke of real work. "You are not like the others. They brought poetry and lies." "You bring grease and warnings," she said. He chuckled and leaned against the panel. "You don't seem like a woman who wants poems anyway," he said. "You are right. I want honesty, brutal honesty. Even when it hurts," she said. "That's a rare taste for someone in charge of killing 47 men." He replied. She didn't react with anger. Instead, she stepped closer and sat across from him. No guards, no throne, no armor. Just the two of them between buzzing machines and leaking pipes. "Do you judge me for that?" she asked. "I don't know you well enough to judge. But I know power often kills more than it saves," he said. "And what would you do with power, human?" she asked. "I'd unplug the failing systems and rebuild them from scratch," he said. They looked at each other for a long time. Her eyes glowed. Faintly, his held no fear, only exhaustion and clarity. "You intrigue me more than I expected," she whispered. "Don't get too intrigued." "I still have 2 coolant ducts left to fix," he replied. Later that evening, the Empress called for a private feast. Only Jackson was invited. He entered the golden chamber with his boots still dusty. He sat at the table without bowing. "Why am I here?" he asked. "You've earned a break," she said. He looked at the food. Exotic dishes, glowing fruits, meats from worlds he'd never visited. He picked a piece of something fried and bit it without ceremony. "You don't care for manners, do you?" she asked. "Manners waste time when no one's watching," he replied. She laughed. Not softly, fully, for the first time in years. Her voice rang with something that wasn't fury. "You are dangerously refreshing," she said. "And you're weirdly forgiving for someone who's killed 47 guys," he said. She leaned closer. Her voice dropped low. "You're still not afraid of me," she said. "Afraid of the palace collapsing under its own broken parts." "Not afraid of you," he said. "You should be," she whispered. "Maybe, but I'm too busy to care," he said. She leaned back in her seat. The glow of the chamber lit her features in a way he hadn't noticed before. Strong, sharp, beautiful, in a way that had nothing to do with softness. "You still think this is just a job?" she asked. "Yeah, until it becomes something else," he replied. "And what would make it something else?" she asked. "I don't know yet. But I'll know when I see it," he said. They ate in silence for a while. The air between them shifted, not heavy, not light, just real. When the night ended, she stood and walked him to the exit herself. No guards, no rules. Just 2 people leaving a meal, and for the first time, the Empress did not return to her throne. Room * storms rolled across the mountains of Zavkara. Black clouds filled the skies, and thunder cracked like shattered metal. Most of the palace had sealed its doors. Even the nobles hid inside their chambers, but one man stood outside on the landing pad, soaked from head to toe. Jackson stared at the blinking console of a broken transport drone, ignoring the rain as it soaked his jacket. The Empress stood behind the glass of her chamber, watching him work. He looked cold, angry, determined. She hadn't summoned him in 2 days, not since the feast. She was testing herself. Testing him. Inside the palace, the nobles argued again. Vresh spoke louder than the rest. He claimed the Empress was losing her grip, that the human had changed her mind, made her soft. He demanded Jackson be sent away. She didn't reply with words. She simply raised her hand. A moment later, the guards removed Vresh from the room without ceremony. When she turned back toward the window, Jackson had finished the drone. It lifted into the sky with perfect balance. Then he walked back inside without even glancing toward her tower. Later that night, he entered the lower generator hall and found a table covered in food. No servants were in sight, just warm meals waiting. He sat down, ate quietly, and then left. The Empress had watched through hidden screens, not to spy, just to see if he would stay. But like always, Jackson didn't play games. The next morning, she appeared in the generator hall herself. No crown, no robes, just armor and silence. He looked up from his work and raised an eyebrow. "Something broken?" he asked. "No, I came to see something real," she said. He didn't stand. He didn't bow. He just kept working. "You're not used to being ignored," he said. "No, I am not," she replied. "Must be exhausting. Everyone always trying to please you." "Always afraid," he said. "Yes, even when I hated them, I pitied them," she said. She leaned against the wall and crossed her arms. The machines hummed around them. For a long time, neither spoke. Then she broke the silence. "I once believed strength meant fear, that no one could betray me if they trembled in my presence," she said. "And now?" he asked. "Now I wonder what it would be like to be trusted instead," she said. "You have to give something up to earn that. Power, pride, maybe both," he said. "You would give those things up?" She asked. "I never wanted them in the first place," he said. She stepped closer. For the first time, she looked unsure, not afraid, just open. She reached out and touched his hand. He didn't pull away. "I have never let anyone touch me like this without punishment," she whispered. "Then maybe that's the problem," he said. She laughed softly and held his hand tighter. Her eyes no longer glowed with anger. They glowed with something else. Curiosity, calm, hope. "Will you stay?" she asked. "If I leave, the palace will collapse." "You still need me," he replied. "I do. But not for the palace," she said. He looked at her and smiled for the first time. "Then maybe I'll stay for that," he said. She leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. The walls of the empire didn't crumble. The sky didn't fall. But something deep inside her changed, and she didn't want to kill this one. The next morning, the palace was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that came from fear, but from peace. The guards stood taller. The servants moved faster. Something had changed inside the walls. Jackson stood at the edge of the palace gardens. He wore the same worn jacket, but his face looked different. Lighter, like the weight pressing on his shoulders had finally shifted. The Empress walked beside him without guards. Her steps made no sound on the smooth stone paths. They said nothing for several minutes. "Just watch the sky brighten above the city. You've been here for many weeks," she said at last. "Feels longer, but also like it passed in a blink," he replied. "Does Earth feel far away now?" she asked. "It always felt far. That's why I left it," he said. The breeze moved through the glowing trees. Birds made of glass wings and light feathers drifted above them. But even in the beauty, her eyes stayed on him. "You've taught me something, not through words, but how you live," she said. "And what lesson did you find in a tired mechanic?" he asked. "That truth is stronger than fear. And honesty lasts longer than blood," she said. He looked at her and nodded once. He didn't need to speak. She already knew what he was thinking. That evening, she gathered her council for the first time in days. They stood in a wide circular chamber beneath a ceiling that showed the stars. Vresh was not among them. The Empress stood in silence for a moment. Then she placed her crown on the central table. It rang softly against the stone. "I am still your ruler. But I will no longer wear the symbol of fear," she declared. The nobles whispered, Some looked shocked. Others looked relieved. Not one dared to speak against her. I executed 47 men, not because they were weak, but because I was afraid. They would weaken me, she said. Now I choose differently. I have seen a man who never bowed, never begged, never lied. And yet he showed more loyalty than any of them, she said. I will not force loyalty through death. I will earn it through action, she said. The council bowed as one. For the first time, it was not from fear. Outside, Jackson finished installing the new shield regulators. He stood on the edge of the landing deck and wiped grease from his hands. When the Empress arrived, he didn't turn. You're changing things. He said, so are you, she replied. You scared them in there. But it wasn't anger this time, he said. It was confusion. They've never seen me walk beside anyone, she said. Let them learn, he replied. Will you stay if I ask you? She said, I might stay even if you don't, he answered. She stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. Do you want a title? A place in court? A golden robe to match my station? She asked. I just want a quiet room. Some tools. And a power grid that doesn't catch fire every week. He said. You're a strange man, she whispered. And you're finally smiling for real, he said. She laughed gently. Not loud. Just enough to make the sky seem warmer. You could be number 48. But not like the others. Not as a title. As a choice, she said. He looked at her, serious for a moment. Then don't call me consort. Don't make me wear medals. Just let me fix what's broken, he said. And what if what's broken is me? She asked. He stepped closer. No fear in his eyes, just calm and certainty. Then I'll fix you too, he said. And for the first time she leaned into someone, not because she needed to rule them, but because she wanted to be near them. Weeks passed. And the empire shifted quietly under the Empress's command. There were fewer public punishments, fewer fear-based orders. The people noticed, and so did the stars above. Jackson moved through the palace like a ghost with a wrench. He fixed energy lines, recalibrated the defense grid, and taught engineers how to solve problems instead of ignore them. He never asked for meetings, never sat in the royal chamber. But his influence spread through every glowing wire and humming console. The Empress met with rulers from other systems. For the first time, she spoke not as a tyrant, but as a leader of vision. Her words were still sharp, but now they were honest. Her advisors adapted. Some left. Most stayed. They followed her not because they feared her, but because they finally believed her. Inside her chamber, the Empress no longer stood alone before the fire. Jackson sat nearby, drinking bitter tea from a metal cup he had repaired himself. You've become part of this place, she said. I didn't plan to, he replied. And yet, here you are, she said. Here I am, he said. She walked over and sat beside him, her armor traded for simple robes. Her crown remained locked away in a sealed box. She hadn't touched it in over a month. Do you miss Earth? She asked. I miss bad coffee, quiet nights, and fixing things no one else wanted to fix. He said. And now? She asked. Now I fix more important things, he said. She reached out and took his hand. This time, there was no hesitation. No fear, no need to test his reaction. You never became number 48, she said. I never wanted to be a number. He said, then what are you to me? She asked, someone who stayed. Someone who didn't run, he said. They walked together through the halls at night. The guards no longer stood between them. The walls no longer echoed with screams. The skulls of the 47 remained, but now they were placed in a quiet vault far beneath the palace. One day, the Empress made a choice. In the central square of her capital, she stood on the highest platform and spoke to her people. Her voice carried without rage but with strength. I once ruled through fire. I believed power meant survival. I was wrong, she declared. I now choose peace, Not weakness, but peace that is built with truth and trust, she continued. I will take no more husbands. I will keep no more titles based on fear. I have chosen a companion, not because I conquered him, but because he never tried to conquer me, she finished. And then she stepped aside, and Jackson stood next to her in silence. He didn't wave, didn't smile. He simply stood with his hands in his coat pockets and his boots still dusty from repairing the city grid that morning. The people didn't cheer, but they didn't scream either. They watched with quiet eyes as the Empire took a breath it hadn't taken in 1,000 years. Later that night, the two of them stood on the western tower watching the horizon. The wind was cold. The lights of the city burned below. You changed everything, she whispered. No, you did. I just refused to play your game, he said. And because of that, I learned how to live again, she said. They stood together without titles, without thrones, without lies. He reached out and touched her cheek. She leaned into the warmth. In that moment, she was not an empress, and he was not a mechanic. They were just two people who found each other in the wreckage of power, and for the first time in her long rule, she chose to love without control. Jackson didn't save the Empire with war. He saved it by refusing to bow, and in return, she gave him something none of the 47 had ever earned. A place beside her, not beneath her.